Hello, Toy Collector fans, Universal Toy Collector here, and welcome to the channel. And welcome to another episode of Toy Photographers Showcase. Yes, hello everybody, hoping you are keeping well, and thank you for joining us. Toy Photographers Showcase is where we invite a talented toy photographer to the channel and we chat in depth about his top 5 toy photography photographs. Today will be a little bit different, and we'll explain that in a minute, but before we do that, let's get on our co-host and good friend, Mark BobaHicks. Hello sir, how are you?
How's it going, Stu? Hope you're keeping well.
I am. It's been fantastic weather this weekend, so very happy about that. Awesome stuff. How are you? Been busy?
Been busy, yeah, but I've also been getting out and about in the sun, and just getting outside and soaking up those rays. It's nice and sunny here in Ireland too, so have to
I'm glad
enjoy
you're
it while
enjoying
it
the weather.
lasts.
Glad you're enjoying
Big
the
time.
weather. As you can see, once again, we have a piece of your artwork as the background. So I just want to highlight this and put this up. I think this is an absolutely fantastic picture for the reasons being you've got 2 different toy lines, and it's a fantastically sunny looking day. Whereas normally the photos that I use of yours to put up here, they're normally taken early in the morning. So you've got that beautiful like sunrise in the background with the clouds and stuff like that. So Mark, tell us a little bit about this picture.
So for this one, this is well, it's crazy to think. So yeah, this is like over 4 years, or just about 4 years ago now. During the big lockdown of 2020, and
Yeah.
the weather was just great at the time. It felt like never ending sunny days, and I was out and about pretty much every day taking photos. We had nowhere to go, nobody to visit. We were all kind of stuck at home, so it was the perfect opportunity to catch up on some toy photography. But for this one, it's it is kind of loosely based on an idea from it's basically, I don't know if anybody watching the video is a fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video game, but there was a quite a famous Ninja Turtles video game from back in the day called Turtles in
Okay.
Time,
Yeah.
which uh, which featured the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kind of traveling back to all sorts of kind of historical periods to do battle with the Foot Clan, but one of the levels was prehistoric times, like dinosaurs
Okay.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this is kind of loosely based on that concept. So I took the Mattel Jurassic World, the Spinosaurus, and
Yeah.
got a bunch of my vintage playmates, turtles, foot soldiers, and just kind of set them up like they're all trying to wrangle this dinosaur and basically capture him and get him under control. And
Mm.
it just worked out well in the sense that those foot soldier figures, they're just like 5 POA. They have no joints. You can't really
Oh
do
wow.
anything with them in terms of
Yeah.
posing. It's just by pure happenstance that they're kind of
Hang on,
pre-posed
let's put this up again. Yeah.
forms.
Come on.
They just kind of like lend themselves to doing what I needed them to do. It's one of those kind of crazy things
Wow.
where, because sometimes when you're trying to set up a photo with these older
Yeah.
figures, you can get a little bit frustrated when they don't have the articulation of a
Yeah.
modern toy. But whatever way the stars just kind of aligned for this picture, and they just kind of look natural doing what they're supposed to be doing. Which for a
Mm.
5 POA figure, it just kind of worked out well.
They look
I've
really
kind of
good.
like, I've knackered toys and stuff like that I couldn't get holding the ropes and posed correctly. Like, and it just crazy that it worked out so well with these old playmates 5 POA butt
No,
soldiers.
it
But there
does.
you
It looks
go.
really good. It looks a real good fun photo, and that's why I chose it for this one. And the dinosaur, the Spinosaurus, I think it looks absolutely fantastic. The detailing on it, the paintwork, just the whole look of it, it does look so cool. I do like those dinosaurs.
Yeah, Mattel do an excellent job with those Jurassic toys. They're still making great Jurassic toys, I have to say. I'm fond of them. My wallet's not too fond of them, but I'm definitely fond of them.
Yeah, I don't blame it. I don't blame it. Anyhow, shall we get our guest on?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we are joined this time round by Tim, all the way from Australia, I want to say.
From Sydney, Australia.
Sydney, Australia.
Good morning from Sydney, Australia. Good evening to you.
Well, good morning to you, sir. Welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for doing this. Really do appreciate you taking the time out.
Thanks for having me.
No. It's an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I spotted you on Instagram, followed, and sent out an invite. And yeah, we're going to be chatting about your photography. Now, as we were saying previously in the green room, and as I alluded to at the beginning of the video, we're going to, because normally we do a honorable mention and then people's top 5, but it's going to be slightly different with you because you've asked for the honorable mentions to be put at the end, and you want us to do it in number order, which you sent me, because there's stories behind the pictures that you've taken. And shall we get into that?
Yes, we can. Yeah, I left the dishonorable mentions to the end, but yeah, hopefully there's a bit of an interesting story, and it goes back a way. So I guess if we start with the first one, you get the impression of that. This is probably the most embarrassing photo I've ever put up on Instagram. Actually, this one.
Yep. So what I'll do is I'll get the pictures up. So here we go. So this is the first one. So I'm guessing this is you as a youngster.
Yeah, that's me and my younger brother, the one in front, looking stupid. And if Matt sees this, he'll be very embarrassed. So I'll make sure to send it to him. And that's me in the background. I think this was taken in around about 1985 when I was probably about 12, give or take. And obviously, I was, when I was born, Star Wars came out. I remember seeing it in the theaters. It's one of my very first memories. And of course my dad was went with me, and he was always a fan too, and he still is. I'm still telling him he needs to watch Andor because he hasn't seen that yet. And so is my brother, but we collected the 3.75 inch figures and I had a pretty good collection as a kid, and I love to build I think these boxes came from like maybe a fruit vendor, but they were like a really nice solid wood, and I used them, paper mache. I was using chicken wire as well to build sets, as I called them, dioramas, as we sort of call them now, and paint them and so on. And I had a bunch of them. I had a Tatooine one, there was a Hoth one, and you can see there was an Endor one. It even got to the point where I was sort of building, my brother had the mask toys, so I built quite a large volcano with opening doors and whatnot. So for me it was these hobbies have always been there of Star Wars, building dioramas, and I would take photos of them. But it was a crappy little 35 mil, wasn't even that, it was like a 12 mil film camera, and it had fixed focus, and there was a flash thing that came on it. You stuck it on and the flash bulbs would explode, and that was it. You had one use of them. And you had to wait then 3 weeks for the photos to come back, and they were blurry, and it was terrible. But that hobby hasn't changed. So if you go to the next photo, you can see this is one I did kind of as an homage to it. The aspect ratio has gone a little bit out. I don't know. Some of them are a portrait, but maybe we can fix that one in post. I don't know. But this was just a setup that I did in the studio where I'm at now, and with the modern Black Series figures, just as a way of kind of harkening back to that shot from before.
I was going to ask you, what figures did you use for this? So it was the Black Series ones, yeah?
Yeah. So the next slide will sort of explain how I got into this a little bit more. But yeah, I made the decision to go with the Black Series. They're obviously larger, the 6-inch format, which gives them more detail. They've got better articulation. And because there was a limited set, I could make the decision to try and collect all of them. And also, if I ever wanted to do customizing, I could customize them. And they're a little bit bigger for, clumsy hands to customize. So this shot was kind of
Sorry. Yeah, go on.
No. No, after you.
I was going to say, so we've got the inspiration for this one. So I'm guessing that you wanted to recreate that scene that you had in picture one. Is that what you were looking for this?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. Also, just having, I mean, the Black Series Tauntaun is beautiful. It really is. It's just a lovely figure. And so sometimes I just want to be able to show those figures. This one was just a simple one. I wanted to be able to, there was a couple in the series. Quite often when I post to Instagram, I'll post, 2 or 3 from a series. This is that kind of, well, what if the Wampa found Han instead of finding Luke? So a lot of my photos are, I don't like to recreate something that you've seen on screen before. That's someone else's art.
Yeah.
I love to sort of kind of go, all right, in that universe, what other stories haven't been told? What are the backstories? What are some of the moments taken out? Or what are some of the what ifs? What if Han had found the Wampa? And the other photo, I actually debated which one to show you guys, but maybe we can throw it up as well. If you, I'll send it to you separately. You can throw it up now. But it was, the Wampa found Han. Han, being the savvy old space pirate he is, knew it was coming and blasted it before it got close to him. And just, stories like that. But yeah, this one was kind of like a little bit of a throwback to that shot. I don't know if it was intentional, but when the two came together, it was an obvious parallel.
Oh, cool. Mark, you got anything to add to this?
Well, I think this shot here that we're looking at now is fantastic, and you are right, Tim. That Black Series Tauntaun is a great toy and a real beautiful looking piece, and you really managed to capture the detail of it. Just to backtrack though a little bit as well, that the first picture that we've seen with you as a kid and that diorama setup, that's actually really cool that you had that set up as a kid. Like, that looks like something that you actually would see on a Kenner box, like like the way they would do the kind of setup with the figures. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's really awesome. I love that. But yeah, look, going back to this one that we're looking at now, you've really nailed it here, and I love the idea of this kind of, it's not something, you're not recreating something we've already seen on screen. It's more like adjacent, a what if, as you said, or maybe a deleted scene that never was. But yeah, I just love the idea that we're seeing something off camera here that we shouldn't be seeing, and it's intriguing. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So with this whole setup, Tim, how long did it take for this whole process and for you to get the actual shot that you were happy with?
Look, this setup's pretty simple, right? It was so here in the studio, I've got a bunch of trays, one with sand, and I've got all the various accessories I need, including some sort of fairly off-color white paper. Use that as the base. I use talcum powder for snow, and ended up not even needing the base in this one. Although I think beneath the Wampa you can sort of see the edge of the base. So this one was pretty quick to set up, and I usually will take from setup to breakdown is usually an hour or two, depending on how complex the photo is, how many figures, how often they fall down. And for this one, I took a whole bunch of different angles and so on. What I then do is, and this has been the process for all of them, I sort of set it up, I light it. For me, the most important thing is I often have a digital background, getting the lighting to match the background, checking it in camera, and then capturing probably 20 or 30, maybe more photos. And then I'll go through them and select the ones that I think are good, take them into Photoshop, do the color adjusting, and then I'll select one, maybe two, to do the sort of post-production. And so one of the things that I always loved, and I've been a digital person since the internet began, where my name came from. And so I've been using Photoshop since it was probably version 3. I think it's up to version 15 now. I'm probably showing my age, but then again, I was a kid when Star Wars came out, so there's no surprise there. And so being able to sort of add little bits in Photoshop. So for example, in this shot, the breath that's coming out of both Han and the Tauntaun was added.
Oh wow! Look at that.
And the snow.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do, and the other thing I'll always do, if you look at any of my photos, I'll remove the joints. So even though the Black Series are quite good for articulation, I don't want to see the joints. So I actually always remove those because I want to make this look real.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you've certainly captured that. And looking at it now, I can actually see the breath that you put from Han and the Tauntaun and the joints. So yeah, I'm liking that. Mark?
Yeah.
No, it's like I said, I absolutely love it, and I can appreciate because I will dabble here and there with those type of edits in my own photography, but I can definitely tell that you're a skilled hand at doing this, because you've blended it so well with how you've removed those joints that it's very like it actually it looks like an actual in action shot that you've just happened to capture. Like, I think that's the beauty of it. Like, it captures the motion of the moment. And like the extras that you've added in, like the snow on top of that, and even just like how it's focused with Han and Tauntaun in frame, but the Wampa just slightly out of focus there, but he's looming in the background. It's just a great moment, and it's captured so well. If you were to take another crack at it, is there anything you do differently, or are you happy with how it turned out?
I mean, I guess for most of the shots that I've selected for this showcase, it'd be hard to sort of say, "Oh, I'm not happy with this," because these are ones that I selected because I was quite happy with them. I think in this one there were a couple of other variations of the shot. One, hand alone, was portrait, and one which I'll make sure you guys get, and you can always throw it up. Hand shooting. They're not as dynamic as perhaps I might have liked, but again, if you go back to that original one, the character's a lot more static. So it was sort of in keeping with that. But yeah, no, I think for what it was nice to explore that. And, I don't do a lot of photographs with the Hoth figures. It's, one is stuff gets everywhere and they're quite specialized, but I have done a bunch. And again, I love telling those what if stories. Like I did one with Han walking through the corridor, catching Leia and the Wookiee kissing. So they'd rather sooner kiss a Wookiee. Fine, let's see what that looks like. And another one with the Black Series snow speeder, which is beautiful. And I'll talk about how I got into the Black Series in the next shot. But that one with Vader capturing Luke on Hoth, what would that look like? So I love telling those what if stories, and you'll see that through the photos that you'll see.
So
as we proceed.
With this one, then, what is it about this photo then that stands out for you to have it in your top 5?
Yeah, I think it was more just because it harked back, and I think for me, sometimes the top 5 photos, as we said at the very beginning, I couldn't just choose 5. I mean, I've got about 500 out there, and when I narrowed it down to the top, there was 77, and then I narrowed those down. It was really difficult, and I just love this one because the way it ties back to that photo taken, nearly 30 years ago. So the photo itself is a great photo, but it's for me more the emotions and the story that this photo tells that makes it significant.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. Well, let's move on into this one. Now, I've got before you say anything, I absolutely love this photo, and this is a photo that Mark can relate to. Mark, I shall let you explain.
This is probably like one of no disrespect to any of the other photographers we've spoken to on the show so far. They've all been fantastically talented and do great work. But this is actually my favorite picture that I've seen so far since me and Stu have been doing this show. I absolutely love this because I always love the idea of a Star Wars and Aliens crossover, particularly the idea of stormtroopers fighting xenomorphs. I just absolutely adore it. I've done this myself on a few occasions, this kind of scenario, and it's just such a fun scenario to me. Like it's just something that's so fun, the concept, but you have really just absolutely nailed it. I mean, it's just a real piece of work. It's a real piece of work how you've lit this, the perspective. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Let us know what's going on here. How did you set this up? Give us the story here.
So, I mean, there's a story leading to this, but I'll talk about the setup just quickly first. Obviously, Black Series Stormtroopers, which I've sort of got a stack of now. I think that's a digital diorama in the background. I think I used maybe a little bit of atmosphere aerosol in it. And then the alien figures are the McFarlane Toys ones. There's a original Alien. I think there's might be an Aliens one, and I think some of the Alien Resurrection figures as well. The interesting one is the one in the foreground. To get that, I actually it's a ceramic bust. So this is a little bit of false perspective, which I've enjoyed playing with, to get that, real close-up detail at the same time having the other figures still somewhat in focus, and then playing with depth of field. So I was really quite happy with this photo. There's another one that was almost as good, and between the two, I've ummed and ahed about which one. But with a little bit of external advice from my wonderful and patient partner, this is the one I selected. But the story behind it, I think, is even more interesting than the photo. And thank you for your kind words. But the story for me makes this one even more significant. So you guys saw that I was doing Star Wars toy photography back in the 1980s. And then I didn't for many, 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 many years until the end of 2021. And obviously we had COVID, lockdown was sort of on and off. And I was reading a Gizmodo article and about toy photography, and it featured the work of another really good photographer who leaves me for shame, which is Kilcutter, Chuck. I don't know if you've worked with him before in Chicago, I think, but he's brilliant. And this article featured some of his shots, and there were black series. There was one that still sticks in my memory, and I can pull up the article. You can always show it up on screen if you want. It had a scout trooper leaning against his bike, his scout bike, against he was in this sort of watery field with some trees behind him and smoke. It was just beautiful. It looked real. It was gorgeous. It was something I'd not seen before, and it suddenly clicked that this is the hobby I wanted to get back into. Because I hadn't collected figures for many, many years. I've still got some of my, vintage stuff, which I'll sell from time to time. But I'd looked at the Black Series in passing. I couldn't really afford them. And then I saw this article in Gizmodo, and it was my passions. There was Photoshop, there was beautiful photography, and there were these figures. And at the same time, at the end of 2021, when I was working, we'd had a really good year and got a commission payment that was substantially larger than usual. And so I thought, this is what I want to get back into. So I, with the blessing of my partner, found that there was a guy here in Sydney who was selling a whole bunch of stuff. And in one go, I kind of got everything from the snow speeder and the, the, what do you call it? The first order TIE fighter.
First order, yeah.
Yeah. And, 100 of figures maybe. And that kind of was my starting point. So then fast forward, and this is, I think, September in 23, I'd reached out to Chuck, to Kilcutter, and said, hey, your work is what inspired me to get into this. And he, being the really lovely guy that he is, responded because, I think as artists, we enjoy being acknowledged for what we've created, which is why I'm so grateful for this show. And he was the same. And I proposed a collaboration. And he'd done some Alien Star Wars crossovers as well. So that was the suggestion. So this photo is the one that I did in September last year in collaboration with Chuck. So he did one and I did one, and we both posted. And I don't often do a lot of collaborations with a single artist, but to do that with him was really meaningful because his work is what got me into photography or toy photography again.
Yeah. I've got to say that's an incredible story, really is, and really interesting. And
Mark's getting teary.
I just don't, because you'll get me going. I just love the way that the stormtroopers and the white looks against the aliens, because the one Mark has shot, well, I just was blown away by that, the colors, the look of it, and just the thought of stormtroopers coming up against aliens. I just think it's incredible. I really do, and I'm loving the colors in this. The reds in the background there, the lighting, and you say that the alien in the foreground's a bust. So I think that's absolutely incredible how you've managed to do that. I mean, for this shot, then, how long did it take you to do this shot and the whole process?
Yeah, this was quite an intensive shot to set up because there's so many figures, and Obviously, they're not always stable. The aliens aren't bad if you can get their tail to counterbalance them. Oh, there's one other thing I should mention. The two stormtroopers in the background are Black Series, but the one in the foreground is actually one of the Star Wars Unleashed figures. It's the Han Solo Star Wars Unleashed, Han in stormtrooper outfit.
Okay. Wow.
So that's the only other thing I've collected is the Star Wars Unleashed figures, because they're even bigger than the Black Series, which means you can play with size, because aliens tend to be bigger anyway. And they have some really great movement. Of course, you can't do much with them because they only pose in one way, but in this case, I that dynamic action, I couldn't have got that as well in a Black Series. So I think I did this one still when I was back at my old place. So before I moved into my new place with this sort of larger studio, you can sort of see in the background here. My old place, it was sort of, I was on my table, which I had to break down and set up. This probably took about an hour to set up, take a lot of different photos. Selecting them was hard, as it often is. Ended up with two good ones. And I think in post-production, all I did here was just throw in a few sparks just to give it a little bit more atmosphere, maybe a little bit of smoke. So probably a couple of hours end to end is usually the way. But yeah, for me, I think the process of getting Chuck to agree and to define a time, because he's such a busy guy, and to be able to put this out, the time to take the photo was small in comparison for.
No, I love it, and I love the way that you're using different figures as well to do your photography. Mark?
I think it's genius, and it's even more impressive knowing like that you have messed around with scales. They are using a Star Wars Unleashed figure, and as somebody who owned a few of those McFarlane aliens, I know even just to get them to stand sometimes can be a job in itself. Like it can be very, very difficult to stand and pose. So for you to guess what you did out of that one, especially the one that's featured right in frame there, it's incredible what you've done. And seriously, the way you've lit it is perfect. Like the xenomorphs, they're a funny thing to try and light because they are so dark that sometimes if you don't get the light hitting them in the right way, you still can't see them. They're just like these shadows, but you've just got the balance perfectly where the light's hitting them in such a way that you can really see all the detail on their flesh. And you've done a bang up job. I'm not even actually going to ask you if you would change anything with this one. Like, I don't know what you could change. I think it turned out pretty perfect.
I agree with that.
Yeah, there was an alternate version of this where I think the trooper was firing, but this one without it, I think, has even more significance. And yeah, you're right. Lighting the aliens is hard. I mean, they're really reflective, but you can get that beautiful contrast between the sort of the bright areas, especially that that foreground alien and the one in the midground. Those shadows, and they are such a distinctive thing. They are fun to shoot, but yeah, they can be difficult. So getting various lights on this, and it's usually one of the things I'll spend the most time with. I'll get the figure set up, and I'll take some shots, and I'll mess with the lighting and take more shots until I get ones that the foreground and the digital background match, and I'm showing what I want to show. And obviously, you can enhance areas in Photoshop, but yeah, lighting's always the trick. And I guess as a photographer who's returning, because I've always enjoyed photography, and I did it at high school and as a hobby. But getting more into things like depth of field and focal length and lighting has really been what's been able to take shots to the next level.
I mean, for me, I think lighting is very important. It really can make a photo or break a photo. You've absolutely nailed this. You really have. And I think the good thing about the stormtroopers, with them being white, you can get all sorts of different colors come off them and stuff like that. And it does look incredible. I really do like that. And it's very reminiscent to a photo that Mark's taken. And I was trying to look for it a bit earlier, but I couldn't manage to find it and whatnot. But yeah, this is absolutely quality. Love it. So again, going to seem a bit of a silly question, but what is it about this photo for you that makes it into your top 5 or
look, I love the aliens stormtrooper crossovers, and I had to do at least one in this. I've done a bunch of others, right? There was in the Mandalorian, there was that episode on the ice planet with the spiders, which of course
Yeah.
is quite terrifying. And then Grogu's walking through these eggs, and I'm like, God, that looks like Alien. So I did a shot like that, and I've done a few shots with the Alien Queen figure, which is a beautiful figure, but so big it's hard to photograph. But this one, again, the composition, the lighting, but more than that, it's that connection to Chuck and to Kilcutter that got me into this, and the fact that this was done as a collaboration with him that made it it had to go in.
Yeah. I mean, for someone who, as a kid, never liked mixing his toys, I prefer keeping my Star Wars to Star Wars, GI to GI Joe, and stuff like that. This, I just absolutely love this. I think it's quality. So, anyhow, let's crack on with the next one. Let's move on.
Yeah, I always think it's a big enough galaxy you can have aliens there.
This one might be a bit out of focus, but again, I'm loving the lighting. Absolutely loving the lighting. What was the inspiration behind this one?
Yeah, unfortunately, the aspect ratio is again out, the portrait one, and again, maybe we could fix it later and put the right aspect ratio. But this shot was the first photo I ever did as Star Wars. Wow. So that's the reason I've chosen this. But also, I learned a lot, but it was also great fun, and I'll tell you the story behind it. So that AT-AT in the background is the original AT-AT that I had from as a kid. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the original Kenner 1980s one, and my brother and I sent away from it. It got shipped out to Australia via cargo ship. It took months, but it was amazing, right? It's this massive thing. It was like having a pet dog. And I still have it. And the funny thing is, so I have two boys. And at the time, they're now 17 and 15, but at the time I started, which is, getting close to 3 years ago, my youngest was about the same age as I was in that first photo. And he's a little less interested these days, but at the beginning, he was quite happy to have fun with me and do this hobby together. So we did this shot together, and we did it in my old bedroom, my old place, on my old table there. And he was wielding the smoke machine, because I had a smoke machine we got for a Halloween night, and he set these figures up. So we had like a tray, and there was some moss, and I put some water in it, and he was having fun putting things in, and he did a lot of the figure posing. And I think I photographed it against a grey background. So we did the photos, and then separately photographed the AT-AT. And this is one that it took us together probably an hour or two to take the photos, because this is our first time, and compositing it in Photoshop, being again the first time I'd done it in years, took a long time. And obviously since then we learnt a lot. But for example, the lighting under the chin, I think we just gaff taped like a torch there to get that lighting effect. But even then we had to separately composite them. So it was a great example where, working with my son to do this as a hobby together. He still loves that figure. I mean, he has both one of the range troopers and the AT-AT up in his bedroom upstairs. And it was just, it was a father-son thing, and it was our first one that we put up. I don't think it was the first one I may have put into Instagram, but it was the first photo we took. So I had to put it in for that reason. Probably not my best work, but
I mean, I like it. I think it's
important.
I think it's pretty. I think it looks pretty cool. Mark,
I think it looks really cool too. And one thing, like I was looking through your profile recently after Stu sent me the link to it, and you definitely know how to get the most out of these range troopers. You've given me a real kind of appreciation for them, kind of looking through your feed, and even seeing them here in this photo. They're a very cool looking version of a trooper that probably don't get enough love. But no, I love the whole idea. I love the idea even of you kind of taping on the flashlight to the big walker. You really kind of nailed an alien world setting here. How did you get this kind of like alien looking plant stuff, or is that like bandy throws or something like that? It looks really, it looks very 1960s Star Trek. I love it. Like it's just
it does a bit. Hang on, I've got a bunch of them here. Let me grab them out. So that's these things. They're just from a palm tree. So where I was living before, we had a palm tree in our backyard, and they would do quite interesting looking branches that would come off. So that, I'll just put this away so I can keep standing here. Those were just ones that I picked up from the backyard, but they're sufficiently alien looking that when we, sort of stuck them into the we used a tray from Kmart, stuck it into the moss, or just blue tacked it in, and then used moss to cover it over, and then put the figures on top. So they show up in a few of my photos. But I like using especially within Australia, we get some weird looking plants. There's a few other photos I've taken where I've just picked seeds or berries from plants come autumn, and use those in photos because they look like Star Wars fruit. So that's where that came from. The moss came from the garden, and then my son put those reflective rocks in just to have a bit of fun, and we put some water in, and it was just we're playing around to have some fun. And I put another photo that he posed. I guess that's one of the things I have been learning. The posing is actually what really makes a photograph good. You can have great lighting and everything else, but if the figure isn't well posed, it's not a compelling shot. So even learning posing is still being, this posing is not the best, and I've still got a way to go. But I think if I was going to change anything, it'd probably be that in this one. The posing could be better.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was going to actually ask you next. Is there anything that you would change for this photo?
Yeah, I think as a learning exercise, it was amazing. We were using a smoke machine back in that day, which of course filled up the bedroom with smoke, and we had to open the windows and blow it out. But it was a good learning exercise. So obviously there's lots of things that change differently. I do love that the range trooper figure. I did a trip recently for work down to Queenstown in New Zealand, and New Zealand for its landscape. You see it in things like The Lord of the Rings, and Queenstown's a beautiful town where it's got these mountains just going straight into the ocean, very, very much like Scotland as well, and parts of Ireland. And I took a range trooper with me there and sort of just used it because it is, as you say, Mark, an interesting figure. The boots are quite good, and some of the recent shots I put there are just of the range trooper. There's a bit more Photoshop in some of those, but I think for this one, I would probably try and do it all in one shot rather than two and composite it. The posing could be improved.
Awesome. Okay, Mark.
I love it. I'm curious, just how did you get like the Imperial shuttle and the planet at the top? Is that like a screen, or what way have you mixed this in here?
Yeah, those were done in Photoshop. A lot of my shots will have, if there's space in it and it makes sense, will have a ship of some sort or something to give it a bit more depth. And so this is one of the first times I've sort of composited in using Photoshop the planet and the shuttle. And you're having fun with a bit of lighting, so you can see the sort of trail, the exhaust trail of the shuttle there, giving it a bit more light source, and also just adding lighting to the mask of the range trooper. I think in the movies they don't have that light. Some of the newer media, like in the Bad Batch, where they've got the Republic Commandos, and some of the games, which I'm not really a gamer, I was more comics and the movies and the shows, but they light up the visor, and I think the range trooper needs that, so I always add that in, even though it's probably not canon.
Well, no, I like it. It looks pretty cool. Right, let's move on to the next one. Now, I've got to say, I don't know what it is about figures in water. I just think it looks, I love this. I just think this is so cool. It looks so simple, but I don't know what it is about figures in water. And we've had people before with figures in water. So what was the inspiration behind this one?
So back when my youngest and I were still doing a lot more of this together, we would go to the beach sometimes. And this is down near Manly, the north end of Manly. And there's an area there where a lagoon kind of lets out into the sea, and this is that kind of flat between the lagoon and the sea. So it's had that beautiful reflective. And we took a few figures. I think I took some troopers and some sand people, because we were going down to the beach and it was probably too cold to swim. I think would have been kind of wintry time, and we took a bunch of photos, but there'd been a big storm earlier on, so there wasn't a lot of sand flats. But this area where the lagoon meets the ocean was beautiful, and my son did the posing. So I was sort of down there. We were using the camera. I had this little tripod. Actually, it was this tripod here. So the camera was very close to the ground, and he was posing these figures. And I chose this one because this is his sense of humor. He was probably 13 at the time, and he's got a good sense of humor. and he posed these figures. And I think that one of the shore troopers had fallen in, and he's having trouble posing them. But he did this because obviously there's a story here of like the commander is like, "What the hell, man? Can't you stay clean?" And you could just see it in the posing. So he did this, and I love it. I think it's just really funny. And then of course the reflection in the water makes it look, you get a reality you can't otherwise get.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, that's why I chose this one. I love it.
Like I said, I don't know what it is with figures in water. I just think it works so well, and it's got such a natural look to it. It just looks, really like that one, Mark.
Yeah.
And yeah, just to echo what you were saying about the figures in water. I always love seeing the reflection, bouncing back. But here, like, look, your son has a very good sense of humor. I just love the idea of this guy, wading through filth, and his commanding officer just being like disgusted at the state he's gotten himself into. Like, it is funny. And yeah, it's obviously what you've described. Like, geographically, I have no idea of any of the places you're talking about, but they sound like beautiful areas, and you definitely kind of nailed it in terms of location, being able to capture this, because I'm assuming this is all, natural daylight as well, like, and that makes it really beautiful. And like, I really do have an appreciation for outdoor shots, so seeing something like this that looks so kind of real and natural, yeah, it definitely does it for me. Great shot.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I do a mix of indoor outdoor, and there's something you can't replicate from outdoor photography. The lighting and just the scope you get. I'm limited by the size of my background. I used to have a television for big photos, and it died. So now I've only got a screen for the background for indoor shots. You can't get that with an outdoor one. And even though I've tried photographing with water, I've got a big tray which I can use and put water in. It's just not the same. So for me, I love the fact that this is taken at a famous beach. I mean, there are two famous beaches in Sydney. There's Bondi and there's Manly. One's south, one's north. Everyone knows Bondi, but Manly is almost as famous. And it's a nice long beach. It's the one I tend to go to because it's closest to home. And to go there with my son, for him to be part of doing this with me, to him to set that up, and we had a good laugh because it's funny, And that sense of humor, that sense of fun, is something that you'll see in a lot of my photos as well. So that's why I had to choose this one.
Cool.
Yeah.
And another thing, a good thing about it is as well, it's like the background. I mean, it's blurred out, but I'm guessing they're real buildings, or there's real stuff in the background there.
Yep, it's actually, I think, a cliff. It's part of the cliffs. Actually, that could be. There is a pool there, like an ocean pool as well. That might be the corner of the ocean pool.
Okay, it just looks like there's definitely like an imperial building or some sort of building in the background there, which I just thinks adds to the realism. So, how long did it take for this whole process? I mean, because obviously he's posed the figures and stuff like that. How do you know when you've got a good shot?
Look, sometimes you do just know. Again, here I was taking a bunch of different photos. I think I was sort of down on my knees taking the shots. It's hard on your back, and I had the camera. I use a Canon 60D. So this is my primary camera here. I actually only have one lens, which is very lazy of me. But
do you want to put that to the camera?
135. Sorry.
Okay.
So it's a 60D with an 18 to 35 lens. And I like this because, when you get enough zoom, you get that short depth of field, that beautiful bokeh effect. Yeah. And, it's a reasonably old camera. I originally got it for when the kids were young to take sports photos through my sister, who happened to have a friend at Canon. And, it's my primary, it's my only camera, really. I'll sometimes use the iPhone. But we're on the ground. He was setting up some posing. We just took a bunch of shots. They'd fall over. He'd put them up, and this one just felt right. There were a couple of other in the series that are good, but this one I love it because you can just tell what's happening. It's like, man, what the hell? So I love the expressiveness of it, and it's a tribute to my son. It was a fun one.
And again, these are Black Series ones, yeah.
All of them, yeah.
All of them. Okay. Before we move on, Mark, is there anything else you want to add to this one?
Yeah, well, look, I love the story behind it. I think the story behind it actually really adds to it, and it's cool that you have gotten opportunities to go out with your son and do this type of thing together. Some memories to cherish there for him as well when he gets a bit older, which makes it all the more cooler. But yeah, I just love it. Like I said, I love outdoor photography. I love seeing the figures outdoors, and just like the range trooper earlier, now I'm looking at these shore troopers in a new light as well. I think that happens sometimes when somebody presents these characters or these toys to you, and they look really good. It kind of makes you think, maybe I should pick up a couple of more shore troopers for my collection.
Yeah, I should use them. I remember a time they were hard to get good shore troopers, and they reissued them. But and I think Andor, where they had the shore trooper, help with that. But yeah, they're a fun figure, especially if you're in Australia where you've got a lot of coastal areas and you're doing stuff. And in fact, I think there's another shot with the shore trooper at the end, one of the honourable mentions. But we should move on.
Yep, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the next one. Again, loving this. I think it comes across as quite moody. The lighting and I just love this. So, what was your inspiration and thought process behind this one?
So this character, I cannot remember his name, but he comes from Obi-Wan Kenobi, the guy who was playing the fake Jedi in Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
And I think the body is maybe Plo Koon or something, and then the head's from the Marvel Eternals line. And he's got this beautiful smirk on his face, right? So I don't know if you've seen the Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he goes to this planet and he's trying to find a Jedi, and he finds this guy who's faking as a Jedi, yet he's still a good guy and he's helping people. I cannot remember the character's name, and I should, but I wanted to tell the story of, okay, this character is really interesting, what happened afterwards? And I can imagine him becoming a used droid salesman, right? And he's like, these are the droids you're looking for.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is a throwback to the original. These are not the droids you're looking for. Yeah. And then, I do love some of the droid figures. So kind of you've got the R5 unit, the R4 unit, which is Hondo Onaka's 05 unit, R5 unit from the Star Wars Rebels, from Rebels.
Yeah.
And that's the Hondo figure, right? So I actually had to buy the Hondo figure just for this photo because I wanted that figure. I wanted the story of this fake Jedi selling the R4 unit to Hondo using these are the droids you're looking for as a secondhand droid salesman. And then, in throughout it are other droids. So it's a digital background. Often what I'll do is I'm here in the studio. I've been collecting backgrounds for 3 years now. So I'll have the screen set up. I'll start setting the figures up and I'll choose different backgrounds and see what works. And then there's the droid from Andor with the pit droid on the left there and one of the Gonk power droids. That's a 3D print. I have a local guy, a guy named Adrian from Syndicate Customs Creations. He does a lot of 3D prints when I can afford them for me to use. And I've done a few collaborations with him. In fact, I think the photo I just posted yesterday is in collaboration with Adrian and the Syndicate Custom Creations team, because he does beautiful work. And his paint work is amazing. I could never paint as well as he can. And then in the background, I think there's a station, which you can't really see, and a black particle droid, which is one of my customs where I painted it because I couldn't afford the 000 character. It's so hard to find. Yeah. But I wanted him in this world of these droids, and I think I just used a base. I tend to use this one sometimes when I need it. There's a bunch of foam on it, but it's just a lid from a storage container. But it gives you that nice. It gives you that nice multi-level texture. Yeah. So using that as the base layer, and then just posing figures, and obviously it takes again an hour or so just to get the figures right. There's the little droid from the Fallen Jedi series. In the foreground there.
Yeah.
And then this one had just a single top lighting. I really wanted to get that light on the R4 droid and then reflected with Hondo just as a silhouette. To really sort of, and you can see he's kind of, I'm not sure, but I love this story just because for me this is, it's a posed shot, but at the same time there's this moment of him kind of like, you know, the fake Jedi's like with the eyebrow, this is the droid you're looking for. I just thought it was funny, you know. So
no, it's absolutely awesome. Yeah, I really like it, and I can see the story behind it, which is pretty cool. I'm liking that, and I do remember that character from Obi-Wan as well. So yeah, awesome stuff. And Hondo, I got to say, I do like Hondo. I think he's one of my favorite characters coming from the Clone Wars and stuff like that. Mark,
yeah.
I absolutely love it, and I know you've mentioned about using the digital backgrounds, but I think what I really like about this and what I can really appreciate about it is it's not really obvious or easy to spot where the physical apparatus stops and the digital begins. It looks like there's real depth pushing in behind the droids that we see, and it's you really nailed this in that aspect. And even you mentioned there about the one source of lighting. I think that actually really kind of goes in your favor, especially the way the droids or like both the pet droid and the R5. It's really captured them well, and I love that because I have that Black Series R unit, and I love the way they've made him look filthy, but you've highlighted his kind of dirty, kind of rusty appearance. It's just like, you know, and yeah, I can definitely see the pondering here. It's like, is this sale worth it? Should I be spending money on this dodgy droid? You know, it's I'm not so sure about this whole situation I'm about to get into. No, but no, this is a fantastic shot. If you were to do it again, would you change anything, or are you happy with how it turned out?
Yeah, I appreciate what you said about getting that digital background and the foreground to blend. It's sometimes the hardest thing. Even here, I'm not quite. One of the hardest things for me is when I'm using a digital background to prevent the reflections on the screen. And I think for me, that top left corner is still a little bright. I think if I was going to do this again, I'd probably darken that area, maybe in Photoshop. But it's funny, a lot of my photos kind of pop into my head fully formed, and I know what I want them to look like. And they're never quite exactly right, but this is one that was in my head for a while. And in fact, there's quite often a number of shots. There's one more later on, which has been in my head for a year or more. And I needed to be able to create it. I think in this one, I had to actually order Hondo because I didn't have him, and you know, create the custom to be able to tell this story. But I knew this story was going to be funny, so yeah, I think that I probably wouldn't change. And I do like, you know, the posing. I, you know, maybe could have improved the posing a bit, but it's a fun shot that I just enjoy for the story behind it.
So I guess, you know, the usual question of what is it about this photo that stands out for you to be in your top 5 list?
Yeah, I think it shows the sense of humor that I try and bring across. Sometimes I like to show those quiet moments. A lot of photographers sort of focus on action shots or you know, just imperial troops, that sort of stuff. For me, I like to tell these backstories that you might not know. You know, what happened to this guy afterwards? He became a used droid salesman. It's like being a used car salesman. And I just think it's delightful. And then, you know, being able to have some of these other figures that you don't often see highlighted. Yeah, I love that fact. And I like the lighting in this one too.
Yeah, and I have to apologise. I keep referring to it as a top 5 list. I know it's not a top 5 list, so we'll crack on. So I do apologise for that. Okay, the next one, Mark. Do you want to lead this one?
Yeah. Well, first of all, wow, awesome, and I know we were just a moment ago we were all appreciating a quiet moment, but this is quite the opposite. This is action personified. This is amazing. This is amazing. Give us the background to this. How did this come about, and how did you set this up?
So I have a thing for Twi'leks.
Okay.
Always have, right? I don't know, the greens, the reds, the blues. There's just something about the Twi'leks. And you know, when I was a kid, there was, you know, you had these huge gaps between movies, and you would have the books and then the comics. So I have a fair chunk of the Dark Horse comics, and this character Ayla Secura was one of the characters that they explored in the comics. So I've always loved her as a, you know, she's a Twi'lek Jedi, because the Twi'leks you saw were, you know, Ula the dancer who was obviously fed to the Rancor, and a victim, which, you know, is not my way of seeing, especially women in the Star Wars universe. You know, I always, as a kid, wished there was more. Leah was great, but we needed more strong female figures. So this character was a strong figure for me, and I've always loved her. And obviously she was there in the movies later on, but this is one of those Star Wars Unleashed figures. It's probably the first one I ever got, and I don't remember how I got it. I think it was at a comic store, and I saw it, and I loved it because there's this dynamic movement. So that's the pose she's in, and I always wanted to photograph her. And so then at some point, and I remember this was in my old bedroom, I think I did this by myself, although my son was there helping a little, set this character up, and I think I used some wire to get the battle droids into position, and then Bly and the other trooper behind her. And in the foreground, these were some noodles that came from like foam noodles for packing and other stuff. And again, a digital background. I think I just found one with some interesting lighting. And then I remember I wanted to get some atmospheric effects. So I think we had some, like, a little bit of leftover protein powder. It's this sort of beige tan color, and just sprinkling it down because it's kind of the colors I wanted to go for. And, took a bunch of photos. This one, so, it took a little while to stand up and to get posing and to get that right angle. And then once I had the shot, I did a bit of Photoshop retouching, brought in a few more beams of light, a little bit more brightness reflection on Bly. Obviously added the saber in, which was an interesting one because, you've got to have that droid in the foreground, so it has to show that it looks natural. And the other thing I did on this one, was the first time I'd done it, was put in some random, used a random brush in Photoshop and then a radial blur to get that movement. So if you actually look closely, she's doing a force push, right? And it's moving the atmospheric particles with the push, which is one of the things I really loved about this shot.
Yeah.
So so for me, this shot's been one that's quite a long time in making. It was one of the first shots that got real traction, I think, in my Instagram account. But for me, it was more this character, that pose, and just being able to tell that story. So yeah.
No, awesome. And so, how long did this process take then?
Yeah, this was quite a while. I remember having, my son drizzling protein powder down on the characters. It probably another hour to set up, and then an hour or so or two in Photoshop, maybe even more.
Wow.
Sometimes I'll tweak with them until I'm happy. They end up pretty big, and I think this is the first time I put in extra lighting, like the reflection on Bly's shoulder, to really match up. I mean, for me, the secret of a good photo with a digital background is matching the lighting. So having that same source of light, same direction, and then sometimes I'll overlay so that the rays of light coming through this atmosphere are added again in Photoshop, and trying to connect them, so they connect with her top of her head, connect with her bust, and with Bly's shoulder, to be able to get that lighting consistent. It may not be a perfect shot, but it is one that I'm pretty happy with.
No, I like it. I think it looks pretty awesome. And again, I'm loving the fact that you're using a different scale figure to take photographs with. And I mean, I didn't realize he did a Force Unleashed figure of that character. So yeah, awesome stuff. Mark.
Yeah, the like obviously we were praising your use of the Force Unleashed or the Star Wars Unleashed Stormtrooper earlier, but I think you've even surpassed that here with how you've used her. And it's one of those things where, like, you probably couldn't use a Black Series figure to get that pose the way it is. So it actually benefits the shot greatly to have the Unleashed figure kind of be in that mode. And yeah, the depth of field as well here with that force push, with the droids, everything that's going on. No, I think as far as action shots go, this is one of the best we've seen so far in the show. Like, and you mentioned this was one of the kind of the big shots that got traction for your page. I can definitely see why. This is definitely something that if you're scrolling through that Explorer page, or if this comes up in your feed as a suggested post, it would really take your breath away. It's that type of, it really kind of captures you. Look, for me, I think it's near enough perfect. But is there anything, would you try and redo this in any way? Or are you satisfied with how this one turned out?
I think the only thing I'm not satisfied on this one was the ground. I don't think I was quite happy with how the ground looks. So I'd probably change it to more just a rocky ground, keeping consistent with the base. With the Unleashed figures, you can't change much, right? They're sort of on a base, so you have to map or match the ground to that. There was a shot which I almost put in. It was one of Obi-Wan fighting with the Magna Guards. Again, it's an Unleashed figure. With the Unleashed figures, you've got to with a lot of figures, you can have a scene and change the figure to suit the scene. With the Unleashed figures, you have to use the figure and build the scene around them.
Yeah,
that's what I found. And I did the same with the Obi-Wan, but we had a better better ground cover. I think this one I'd probably redo the ground, but I think that figure lends itself to this pose, and I do love the action. I do love the story of her as a leader, but and this might transition us into the next shot. One of the things that I also don't or watched to avoid doing is glorifying war, because Star Wars is fictional, but it is people dying. We were watching, my son and I were watching Star Wars Resistance the other day, and it redid that scene with the First Order destroying Hosnian Prime, right, the seat of the New Republic. And I was thinking, hang on, that's quite a big moment. How many people lived on Hosnian Prime? Do you guys want to guess? How many people were living on that planet?
Yeah, quite a few, I can imagine.
Anyone want to guess?
Yeah, give us the number. I have no idea.
180 or 179 billion people were murdered by the First Order in that scene, right? And you kind of go, yeah, well, there's the Death Star destruction of Alderaan. That was a few billion people, but 180 billion people, that's true evil. And I think there's this risk of photographers glorifying war. And so while this one is an action shot and they're destroying droids, those same troopers then killed Ayla later on. And for me, this actually led to the next shot. Can we jump to the next shot? Do you guys mind?
Yeah, no.
Because I wanted to counterbalance it with this shot. I actually did this shot for Anzac Day here in Australia, which is the Australian-New Zealand Army Corps Remembrance Day, from World War One, but it's kind of our Memorial Day, I guess. And I think telling the story of the price of war, especially in the world we live in, where there is war going on right now, is important as well. And strangely enough, this photo got more reaction than the one before it. It's a simple shot. It's just a sand background, a digital one, again blending the colors. It's in getting the lighting colors, but the posing and just the story in this one gives it a meaning that I think is important.
I agree with you. I mean, I absolutely love this photo. I just think it tells a story. We have a rough idea of the story. It's very reminiscent to I guess the end of the Clone Wars animated series season 7. I just think, like you say, it's a simple layout, but it tells a story on its own, really. It conveys all kinds of emotions. So for you then, what was the inspiration behind this photo? So why did you choose to do this photo?
I'm struggling to remember. I think it was, maybe it was in, because the new Anzac Day was coming up. I know that I mentioned before the Syndicate Custom Creations team. Adrian had sent me a few figures to photograph. One of them was the Jedi Master from the Fallen Order, Jarrow, the Lasat Jedi. And that was a beautiful figure. And I actually did that one with his Padawan Cal, and sort of doing a what if Jarrow had survived Order 66, or actually, sorry, it was before that. It was, what was the story of Jarrow and Cal during the Clone Wars? And I had this scene with Jarrow walking down the line of graves and Cal sitting on the side. And it was a beautiful shot. But then I also just tried a few variations. I often swap in, swap out figures during a shoot. And this one with Bly, I didn't even retouch it. I mean, you can still see the joint on his leg, which I normally would hide. But it was just the lighting fit with the background,
Yeah.
the motion and the depth of it, and I just think it conveyed that sense of loss and the price of war well. So it was one that just resonated, and it was sometimes they've got to be emotional shots too. I mean, I like telling humor, I like telling romance in the Star Wars universe, or behind the scenes, and I think this is those quiet moments that aren't always shown.
I think it's important to show those kind of moments. I don't think doing toy photography is any way or shape glorifying war. War happens in real life, and you can't hide from that fact. I mean, don't want to get too political or too much into it, but war's happening now. And to see something like this is I think a reminder of what war is about and what happens in war. And this, the stories like this, when he's saying goodbye to his comrades, so to speak, I just think it's a fantastic picture. Mark?
Yeah, it is a fantastic picture, and I'm also admiring it really just from a technical aspect. I'm assuming these are like the Black Series. You've taken the helmets off the actual other Black Series figures. And now that you've explained earlier on about those little branches you were using, I can see their reuse here.
Same
for
ones,
the for the helmets as well. But we are always our own worst critics, and you did mention earlier about if you were maybe to do it again, you might touch up the joints on the troop or what have you. I think now, and this is just something, my own opinion, I think when it comes to troopers and droids, you can kind of get away with not really messing with the joints, because it almost looks like they would be those circles could be part of the design of the armor. And to be honest with you, until you pointed it out, I would not have noticed, which kind of goes back to what I was saying. We can be our own kind of our harshest critics sometimes, because I never would have noticed if you hadn't pointed it out. But I love how you've blended the digital background with the actual practical real setup here. It's done very well. Once again, like depth and just that idea of an open world. I don't feel like I'm just looking at some diorama set up with a background. It feels like a real world moment. And even just the fact of the the two kind of like the four helmets lined up, and just you've really nailed it. And it's kind of like it's not the battle, it's the aftermath, and it's the consequences and the cost of battle. And I think you've captured that perfectly here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
We'll move on to the next one.
I remember what's next now. It's a bit surprised to me too.
Okay, so this is a fun looking photo here. So if you want to give us your inspiration or thought process behind this one.
Yeah, we're getting towards the end. So this is a photo I've been wanting to do for some time. And there was always this thought in the back of my head. It's like, hang on, they've just destroyed the Death Star, and the Imperial Navy can come and get them anytime. Why are they hanging out at Yavin, having a celebration and giving out medals, right? And then I just thought, they're going to have a party. And I've always wanted to do Leia as a pole dancer as well, just because and maybe this goes back on what I was saying before about needing strong female figures, but obviously she was the only woman pretty much the only woman in Star Wars when I was a kid growing up, and of course, she was gorgeous. But for me, this is just a shot I've been wanting to do for some time, and I think I found like a spare Leia figure, and I could sort of have a bit of fun with that, and and then just positioning the figure. So they've got like R2's got the drinks tray. It's a bit hard to make out. And I found a digital background of Yavin. It's got Hera and Wedge's droid, which I added in Photoshop, and Zeb. And Luke's there with his drink bottle, and Chewie as well, getting sloshed. In fact, Chewie, I don't know if you can see it, but he's actually got a medal on his head. He's, like Luke's or Han's medal. 3PO's, malfunctioning and being shut down in the corner. And it was just a fun one that I've been wanting to take for a while. And so I did this for the Star Wars Day this year for May the 4th.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hence the, May the 4th be with you up in the top left. And there was a fair bit of digital work done in this, but it took a while to set it up. The base of the pole is actually a piece of, I think I might have it here, a piece of a Star Wars Jedi training thing. It was like hang on, I think it's here. If I can find it. If I don't find it in the next 2 seconds, I'll stop. No, it's not here. No. This is a lot of my sort of small stuff that I use for props and whatnot. But it was like just a base, and then I put it up on some foam and put some rocks, bricks around it to make it look like Yavin. And then posing the figures took a while, and obviously moving them around to getting the right shot. And then taking that and doing the work in Photoshop, really putting the highlight on Leia with the lighting coming in and darkening the rest. And those you see the rebel troopers in the background. One of those is real, the other two have been added in Photoshop. So just getting additional figures put in there. One of the things I've been doing in all my shots now is always putting a before and after. So if you see these shots and you swipe left, swipe right, you'll always see kind of the before and the after, so you can sort of see what's been added in Photoshop and done digitally.
Actually, I
so
have
for example,
noticed that on your pictures. I have noticed that. I have noticed that on some of your pictures. Awesome.
And so for me,
oh, sorry, go on. Sorry, Tim.
I was just going to say, there's a caption for this one too. I can see Han thinking, this princess might be more fun than I thought after all. So for me, that was kind of like, there's a story in here of having fun after the battle and the characters all getting sloshed.
yeah, absolutely. Awesome stuff. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, no, incredibly fun, really, really funny picture. I think one thing I'm really appreciating about a lot of your shots that you've shown us so far is you've got a real knack at kind of blending the digital and the physical, and even the fact that you like once again, like I wouldn't have known that, like the deal with the rebel troopers, that some are actually there, some aren't there, because it's not noticeable. Like it's not something that you could definitely, you wouldn't be able to tell at first glance. I think though my two favorite parts of this picture is Chewie with the medal over his eyes, but also 3PO lying down with the rebel trooper helmet over his head is just fantastic. I just love it, and it's a great one for May the 4th as well. I think you've really nailed the fun atmosphere here. And yeah, look, Leia, who didn't want to see Carrie Fisher in her prime doing that type of stuff? I know I definitely thought about it. I know I'm not the only one. So yeah, I definitely got your mindset in that respect as well.
Which will actually lead us nicely to the next shot too. But yeah, I know what you mean. And for me, this one also, getting rid of the joints, like with Carrie, to make her look real, the blending, removing the joints in the arms and the knees is just, it just makes it look a lot more real for me.
I like the way that you've added Hera into the shot as well, and Zeb, because they would have been there because they were, in Rogue One prior to events of A New Hope. So I'm loving the way you've added those in as well. So that's pretty cool. We will move on to the next one.
Yeah, we should.
Now this is Darth Talon, isn't it, or Talon, or whatever you want to pronounce that. Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Again, it goes back to sort of reading the comics, and they had the Star Wars Legacy series, and Darth Talon was both deadly and impossibly good looking, but deadly. You wouldn't want to mess with her. And they never done. I think they did a 3.5 figure maybe, but they'd never done a Black Series figure, and I don't know if they ever will. Same with Leia in the
that's the Force Unleashed
the Jabba the Hutt outfit. It is. It's the Force
I have that same figure. I have that same figure.
Yeah, she's normally I think it's like on a skiff holding one of the skiff force pikes or something like that. So this this Darth Talon figure was actually a 3D print that I found from a guy on eBay, and he sent it to me, and I
Wow.
painted it. So that all the detail there was actually hand painted by me. So doing the tattoos, and I used a really fine art liner pen to
Yeah.
do this. And I don't normally, I enjoy doing some painting to do the figures sometimes myself. I'm not great, but this is one I was particularly proud of in terms of the tattoos, and because it was just a grey resin print. And then when I saw the Force Unleashed figure and this figure being almost exactly the same scale, I knew I had to do a
Yeah.
photo. And for me, this is so. Sometimes I'll do a dream sequence that is just a little bit provocative. There was one I did ages ago of Luke having a daydream of this good-looking girl in a metal bikini, obviously his sister, over the leaning on his land speeder, and Luke that land speeder Luke Farmer figure has no shirt if you take off the white cloth, so he's sort of standing there with his bare chest looking at Leia, and it was a dream sequence, the story being Luke woke up feeling somewhat excited yet disturbed from his dream. And I thought this could be one of Leah's dreams, a Force dream, because obviously she's strong in the Force, of things that could possibly be. So it's a what if story, which I love telling. But these figures are so I sort of posed one above the other, having them walking downstairs, and found a background that's actually a Sith temple image from one of the games. I collect background images and put it in, and then getting the lighting right. It's not a perfect photo. It would have been better to have it a little bit more real, but for me to show off those figures and to have that similarity in scale. And even one of the things that I love about this, I fixed the lightsaber, but if you look at the cloth that is coming down from Carrie Fisher's character, it's semi-transparent. So just having a bit of fun with that kind of thing to give it just that little bit of detail that if you look closer, you can see stuff, and Darth Talon's eyes glow. It's that stuff that makes it fun. And, this one's a little bit risque, but at the same time, I think it's a nice photo.
No, it's definitely a nice photo. Mark?
I love it, and I'm very impressed with your painting skills. If that was if I had gotten my hands on just like a grey 3D printed piece, it would not have turned out as well as what you've managed to pull off. Like seriously, you've done an excellent job with that paint. Like it actually, the way you painted her up, like you could have just taken a shot from a magazine of an actress actually done up in her kind of garb. It looks that realistic. It's about even the her clothing, the texture that you've managed to paint on that. It looks like real leather. It actually looks like real material. Like you've taken like a 3D printed piece and actually made it look better than an officially released figure. Like, so I think that in itself is to be commended. And once again, I have to say bravo with using the Force Unleashed figures, especially making use of that. Because let's be honest, that's a very specific pose that Leia figure is in. Likewise with your Darth Valen figure as well. Like, so to be able to have the vision of mind to kind of think I can make this work with these two figures, and I can build a scene around, and the background with the stairs. You've just managed, because a lot of people, like, let's be honest, they'd see a figure that's pre-posed and they just look at it as a statue or something that you can't really do anything with. Whereas one thing you've really demonstrated, Tim, throughout this is like you're great at taking essentially like a static figure and making it look like something that's in motion, which I think is a real talent and a real skill that you've demonstrated here.
Yeah, I second that. Absolutely brilliant. And again, I will second what Mark said about your painting as well. I wouldn't have thought that that was a 3D printed figure, and B, that you had custom that. Looking at that, the leather, it does look real. I think you've done a fantastic job with the eyes. I actually thought that this was a figure of sorts, whether it be like a Hot Toys figure or something like that. It is that good. I think you've done a fantastic job. So I'll take my hat off to you, sir. Absolutely fantastic. Risque, yeah, but who cares? We like seeing things like this. It's just, it's art. It's showcasing a talent, and you've certainly got a talent without any sort of a doubt from from the photos that you've shown us tonight, they have been absolutely tremendous. And your ability to blend in, like Mark said, the digital background to the physical foreground with the figures, the lighting, just the time, care, and attention that you take with your photos to get a shot is just tremendous. So testament to you, sir. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And I know we've probably talked for longer than we should have. We can leave the honorary mentions if we don't have time.
Well, let's just have a quick. We'll just have a quick
quickly.
look. So here's that is out of kilter for sure.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
the proportions a bit out of whack on this one.
What I'll do is I'll put another photo over the top of that. I'll edit that in. But then this one here again, I really like this one. I just think it's absolutely awesome. Is that where's this? I mean, is that real water?
Yeah, so I chose these two as kind of a fire and water cap to the story. They're both taken. So the one before it was taken just in my kind of front yard. There's a space there. It's got the Black Series 3.75 scale AT-AT with some Ewoks, but all the flames in that previous one were added in Photoshop. Right. And for me, this was what made it fun is like, this one here that you're seeing at the moment is the story being dewbacks love water. And the one before it is kind of Ewoks hate fire. And then this one was taken. I had a friend, a good friend who had a place on the lake, and she would let us use it from time to time. This is about an hour and a half north of Sydney. And this lake is just a beautiful lake, Lake Macquarie. And I just took some figures with me, and I got some really good shots. But this one was sort of early in the morning, looking out on the lake, and that white pylon behind him is part of the photo. And then I sort of dropped in, an image of Scariff and also the landing ship. But again, I love the reflection. I just love the natural element of this, and the dewback is a great. Again, going back to the Tauntaun, the dewback's just a great thing to photograph. I touched up the joint so you can't see that it's a toy, and I just thought it was just a nice shot of, and it tells the story. You see dewbacks on Tatooine. You didn't know that they actually come from a watery planet originally, and they love the water. Wow. I don't know if that's canon or not. It's my head canon, but it just does a nice shot.
And again, that's the Black Series dewback, yeah.
It is, yeah.
Wow.
So pretty simple shot, just taken at the edge of the lake, and then the retouching took a bit of time, but awesome. I love, and so some of the things I love in this one, and you can see the reflection of the tower in the water. So adding touches like that for me is what tries to make it real. It's not perfect, but again, there's care and there's love in these shots, because for me they tell a story of my childhood right back to the beginning. These stories that I always told myself and would enjoy being able to make real. Now I have the technology and I have the figures to make these stories real. And for me, it's an escape, a bit of a hobby. I find a couple of hours a week if I'm lucky to do it. I can do it here in the studio, or I'm out and about and I see somewhere that looks cool. I'll set up a figure and take a shot. And if people enjoy it and they find value in it too, then great. I'm really pleased that it works for some people. And
Mark,
that's it.
Any last comments?
Well, for this shot in particular, I really like it. It actually reminds me of in the 90s when they released those, they're like the Star Wars art cards, but they had a lot of concept drawings from like Ralph McQuarrie and all these other artists at Lucasfilm. I don't know why, but this film almost has that. It's something you might see in a concept design book for Star Wars when they were coming up with like a creature or a planet design. So I really like the whole vibe I'm getting from it here. But no, seriously, Tim, like your whole catalog of work that we've looked at here tonight has just been amazing. And as is often the case when we do this show, we're usually talking to people who I haven't, ever seen before on Instagram. So like a few days ago, Stu sent me the link to your profile, and I finally got a chance to look at your stuff. And it's probably one of my favorite things about doing this show is getting to meet other people who are into this type of thing and discover their work as well. So look, I'm following you now on Instagram. I would highly encourage anybody watching this show to go follow you as well. I know Stu, I'm sure, is going to post a link to your Instagram in the description, because I'm telling you, folks, anybody watching now, you really need to take a look at Tim's work. It's top notch stuff.
Absolutely. And yeah, I will be posting a
true.
link to your Instagram page. Tim, is there anywhere else we can find you on social media?
No, just the Star Laws at the moment. It's the only thing I'm doing. I mean, I've thought about doing a book. I did want to do a call out. We mentioned before, you know, the glorifying war, and I know a guy named Alex. What was his last name? Alex Bain. He put together a consortium of photographers and did a couple of books which you can buy on Amazon. One's called Stop Wars. I can't remember the name of the other one, but again, the money there goes to people like Amnesty. So it was a great example of toy photographers coming together as a collective. And I think for me, that's the final thing I would probably add is that doing this hobby, you know, it started with that inspiration from Chuck from Kilcutter. It's become a thing for me to bond with my son about. But there's a community of talented people out there who support each other. I'm part of a weekly Star Wars Saturday collaboration, which has grown from a dozen people to now 40, 45. And they post every Saturday. And you know, they're supportive, they support each other, and for me it was a great way of getting back in touch with my childhood, connecting with my son in a different way, and really enjoying a hobby that makes me happy in terms of a universe far away and telling stories that haven't been told. So you know, for me, just to be appreciated and to be selected by you guys was a huge thing. So you know, thank you so much.
No, thank you for taking time out. I know it's early in the morning where you are at the moment, but for doing this and for showcasing your work and giving us a little insight into your thoughts and your inspirations of as to why you take your photography. And yeah, like I say, you're definitely a very talented guy. I love the attention to detail, the thought processes behind your photography, what it means to you, which is important, and the joy that you bring to other people, so that we can actually share this and showcase your work. So thank you so much, mate. I will definitely be putting the link to your Instagram page in the description below. Tim, once again, a massive thank you so much. Mark, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
I'd just like to say, yeah, once again, a big thanks to Tim. Just for a change, I'll do one of my own cheap plugs. I do a weekly YouTube show with my friend Johnny Sorensen, where we just kind of talk about lots of different topics, from movies, toys, video games, all sorts of stuff. We just recently did our 50th episode. We recorded it yesterday. It's up on YouTube now. Our show is called the Boba Jo Show. So if anybody watching is interested, please go check us out.
And Mark, what I'll do is I will leave a link to that video in the description below as well, mate. So yeah. Anyhow, that will be it for this episode. I just want to say a huge thank you to Tim for taking part. I just want to say a massive thank you to Mark BobaHicks again for co-hosting. Absolutely love doing this series. For all of you guys who've stayed to the end and watched, a massive thank you. It does mean a hell of a lot. Take care, stay safe, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.